So Jesus shared with us yesterday the history of Christ consciousness, as well as why it is so important right now to understand this history, because once you know this information, you have such certainty on the ascension process. You have such certainty on where we are in our evolution. So they started.
And we're also going to elaborate what is the connection between Christ consciousness and Sirius B.
Yes, so we're going to tell it like a story, okay? So first of all, they talked about how they described it to us as this, okay? So they said initially, many million years ago, when the universe was in existence, they said humanity, the consciousness of humanity, think of it like an orb. Think of it as an orb, and there's no physical form. And all of humanity are like in their soul format. They're just in
spirit.
They're just in spirit. They haven't individualized yet. They're all like just moving through the universe as a soup consciousness, soup of God. They're all a bunch of oversouls, basically.
But these oversouls are all humanity.
Yes, so this is the humanity consciousness I'm talking about. So humanity consciousness is already there, but it's not in human form. It's not in individualized
And this
form.
is in the beginning of the universe, when man had not yet incarnated in physical form.
So they showed us that this orb, this soup of God, was traveling the universe, and it was witness to, it was just an observer. So just like your soul, this consciousness was just an observer of all that is. Neutral observer. There was no emotion, there was no polarity, there was no duality, there was no dark and light, none of that. There was no experiences, there was no touch, there was no smell, there was no taste.
No emotion.
And humanity was very content with this way of being. And this bubble traveled through the universe. It traveled through, it saw stars, it saw the sun, it saw many different suns, it saw many different moons, it saw many different planets. This soup of God could even embody these
animals.
It could embody water, or it could embody the sun, or it could embody anything to the tree to feel its consciousness, but it had never experienced physicality. So what happened was, as this orb traveled through the multiverse, through the universe, they came across the Lyrans. For the first time. They said, okay, who are these beings? They saw these tall, like 20, 30 foot beings, shiny beings. They called them, when Jesus gave us his download, he referred to them as the shiny beings. And so when this soup,
also known as the golden race,
and when this soup of God saw these shiny beings, they're like, wait a second, what is this? How did this come into existence? And how come we've never seen any beings? I'm talking about individual beings. So imagine one of us 20 foot tall, we have all these powers, we can speak.
In ascended form, they basically saw the Adam Kadmon form in perfected form, and they came into contact with these ascended beings in the Lyran star system for the very first time, and they were like, we want that. Like, how the hell did you do that? Like we have never seen anything like this before. So this is humanity in spirit form talking to Lyran beings in humanoid physical form, but physical form in such a high vibration that they're retaining consciousness of all 12 dimensions, and they're able to incarnate physically on the planet, and they're able to enjoy emotions, and they're able to enjoy sex, and they're able to have interactions and advanced societies or anything. They can have so many experiences. They can travel in spirit form, and they can travel in physical form, and they have their Merkabas, and they're traveling through the universe. So they said, we want that. How do we make this happen? So yeah, go ahead.
You want me to continue? Okay.
Yeah.
So where were we? All right. So that's perfect. So the next step they showed us was, it was the Lyrans that they came in touch with. So, okay. So then the Lyrans said, all right, humanity, we have come to this star system. Was it Sirius? Where did they come?
The Lyran star system originated from it's known as the Prism of Lyra. There's actually a book named The Prism of Lyra. It's a very good reference book for galactic history. But the Lyrans were ascended beings who had mastered all the cycles in a different universe over billions of years, and they had attained their ascended form. And they were sent by the Elohim, or the founders, to this universe to start guiding other spirit forms who wanted to go through the same experiment.
And imagine how amazing that is, that when one part of the universe gets the cycle of incarnation to ascension, or rather starting the consciousness as a soul or as an ape and moving towards ascended mastery, these ascended beings move to other parts of the universe to start teaching other civilizations the same thing of how you can go from nothing to God consciousness, right? To just being an energy to a God consciousness. So these Lyrans sat humanity down, I mean, this soup of consciousness down, and said, okay, this is how it's done. There is a way in which you can be like us, you can embody God consciousness, you can experience all 12 dimensions, you can individualize instead of being an oversoul group. But for that, number one, there are a few conditions. Number one, you have to incarnate in a third density planet, in a lower density planet. You have to go through all the steps from a caveman, from a cave dweller, to learning how to build fire, to learning everything, sustenance. You have to learn what is good, what is bad. You have to learn
polarities.
You have to master duality, polarity. There's a curriculum. And when you incarnate like this, you are cut off from God consciousness and there's no way out. Meaning, if you as this humanity decides to go back in, if you decide to go into that and say, yeah,
once you're in, you're in. You have to complete the curriculum after that. That's the catch.
They said if you want to be a part of the experiment, you can't exit it in the middle. You have to complete the curriculum, and it could take you 2 billion years, 10 billion years, 5,000 years, we don't know. But this is happening all over the universe, and if you want, you can do it. And humanity said, fuck yeah, we're doing it. Fuck yeah, bring it on, we want to do it. And so the Lyrans and the Arcturians, even though Jesus showed us that their first connection was with the Lyrans and the Arcturians.
Lyrans, Arcturians, Syrians, Pleiadians, Andromedans, all of these advanced beings had at that point attained ascended state in their own cycles. So they came to help this, the spirit of the collective consciousness of humanity go through the same experience. So what they did was they literally sat us down and gave us the lowdown. They said, this is how the game works. If you're in, you're in. You have to go through all the steps of this procedure. And then they literally started in Sirius B. Was that?
Tell them how the Sirius B is a blue water planet with whales.
So yeah, that's very important. So then they once humanity said, yes, we're ready. So then they started having their boardrooms with all these advanced beings, because now we are in the planning stages of Earth.
Now at this point, humanity, now that they said yes, they had the attention of all the ascended beings that had already gone through this ascension process, because that's all these ascended masters do.
Yeah.
Their job is to serve Prime Creator, is to expand this force called Source into as many ways as possible to give God an experience of a lifetime.
Right.
Because what fun is it for God to just be God as nothing? Every single one of us is an expression of God.
Yeah. So basically, the Earth experiment had the attention of all the galactics, because this was the first time that a race was going to be created that was going to master all of the polarities of the dark and all of the polarities of the light. What had not occurred until the Earth experiment in Sirius, in Pleiades, and all these advanced civilizations is that they had not mastered the dark. So because they were so love and light, the polarities were becoming so split in two categories, either so love and light or so dark, like the dark ones, like the reptilians and the greys. So basically there were these two schools of thought, like service to self and service to others. So they were not able to bridge the gap between service to self and service to others and make it come to a neutral point, which is the basic step required for the ascension. They had to create a species that could bridge the gap. So humans were created with the DNA of all the 22 different major species of the galaxy. So we, in our DNA, we contain 22 different DNA of, we contain
species.
Pleiadian DNA, Andromedan DNA, Syrian DNA, Arcturian DNA, and many races I cannot even name because I don't know them yet.
Tell them about the dolphins and the whales.
Yeah, so they brought everyone to Sirius B. Sirius B is like it's like an etheric planet. It's all water, but it's surrounded by etheric beings, and there's also physical
So
beings.
it's a water
So
planet
it's complete water planet, very little, if no
with
land.
high consciousness. So it's a
Very
water
high
planet
consciousness.
with all these 6-dimensional lions, these 6-dimensional
Yes.
to 90. So it's 60 to 90. There's 60 lions, there's 90 whales, there's dolphins.
Yeah, the Arcturian whales are the Arcturians are actually such advanced beings that in order to embody in a planet and retain all of their knowledge, they have to come into the body of an enormous whale, because only that whale can even contain a fraction of that oversoul of the Arcturian. So whales are actually sentient beings. Dolphins are sentient beings. They're very advanced beings. We just think, oh,
Tell them what
playful
sentient
little
meaning.
dolphin.
What
But
is
they're
sentient?
sentient means they're conscious and they're aware. They're intelligent. Like you'll see that in the behavior
Whales
of these
and
beings.
whales and dolphins are actually some of the most advanced species on the planet, and they were actually
Yeah.
sent to Earth to hold Christ consciousness.
Yeah,
Whales and dolphins were sent to Earth to
to
hold
hold the original
frequencies
frequency from Sirius B.
and to then transmit them into the waters, into the people, to hold that frequency for
Yeah.
planet Earth. That's
So
their job.
Their service to humanity is that they create the original grid of Sirius B around this planet, so to even make it possible for us to ascend. So that's why whales and dolphins are very important. And in Sirius B, there's all kinds of etheric beings, all the way ranging from 60 all the way to 90. There's dragons, there's unicorns, there's all kinds of beings that we cannot even name. So they had these conference calls.
So yeah,
Yeah.
when you're done, I have the next piece.
Are you going to talk about the conference board, how they started discussing?
You go
this
with
plan?
that, then I'll talk about how the oversoul came down.
Okay, fine. So basically, they started sitting the soup of consciousness down, and they said, we're going to start breaking you into pieces, and each piece will constitute one oversoul. So in the human consciousness, there's avatar, there's oversoul, there's higher self. So they said, we're going to start breaking you down into individual pieces, and each oversoul will be split into 12 pieces. And those 12 pieces will be the higher self. And so there's many oversouls, and each oversoul has 12 higher selves. And each higher self has 12 human incarnations. So
just to this is an important point, you guys. So basically the oversoul, so remember how humanity was in this soup of consciousness? Now, after this board meeting that happened with the Ascended Masters, basically what happened was the Council of Saturn was created in Saturn, in the planet Saturn in our solar system. All these Ascended Masters led by Jesus Christ, Lord Sananda, and all these ascended beings and the Arcturians and the Lyrans, they said, okay, we're going to create this Christ Consciousness Council, and we're going to start giving humanity codes to get ascended.
Yeah.
So then what happened, as Siman said, was this soup of God, the soup consciousness of humanity, was then this council guided this soup to individualize as oversouls. So imagine this huge consciousness. Like right now we have 8 billion people on the planet. So just for fun, let's say there was 8 billion, like there was so many, everybody was in one soup. They were individualized and brought down as oversouls. Okay, so imagine like the first level was, I mean, I don't know if I need to draw it, but you can maybe draw it.
yeah.
So basically he'll draw it for you guys. So the first level was brought down as the oversoul. Now these oversouls were then individualized into 12 higher selves, right?
Yeah.
So each oversoul was then individualized into 12 higher selves. So you know how you work with your higher selves? Each higher self then individualized into 12 souls.
So more or less like this. This is very quick. So this is the oversoul, and it splits into 12 higher selves, and each higher self splits into 12 different humans. So imagine there's 12.
So your
human
higher
souls.
self has 12
Incarnations.
splits, including you on Earth.
Yeah.
On Earth,
Primarily, this experiment is
basically
Earth.
it's exactly, and each of the souls can be in different dimensions, right?
No, each of the souls can be in any time period.
That's what I was getting at. So each of these souls, so let's say you have 11 twins as part of your higher self. They may not all
11
be there
versions of you.
in this reality. It could be any time in time.
Like one of your higher self incarnations can be in Egypt right now, and one of your higher self incarnations can be in Atlantis right now.
You know why that is? Because in space, there's no concept of time. Time is a very third dimensional concept where we say, okay, now Earth is in 2022. In the universe, there's no concept of time. Everything's just is. It's now. So whether Egypt 8 billion years ago or whatever, Egypt 15,000 years ago, everything's happening right now.
Yeah.
So then what happened? So this was individualized, and then the Council of Saturn.
So I just wanted to fill in one gap here, is that the creation of the Christ consciousness was done on Sirius B to govern the experiment of humanity. So Christ consciousness was first called as a council of ascended masters and all angelic beings of light who were invited from all multiverses. So there's 12 universes in this harmonic universe. And we're one of the 12 universes. Each universe has its own laws. So there's ascended masters like Sanat Kumara, who's known as the Ancient of Days. These are ancient beings from the very origins of time and existence itself. So there's Melchizedek, there's Metatron, Archangel Michael. All of these beings were created in first light, in the first wave of creation. So they were created before all these universes were created. And then many ascended beings had many cycles in other universes, and they had attained ascended mastery by going down in human form for thousands and thousands of incarnations and bringing back that knowledge and becoming ascended and finding their stairway to heaven. So these ascended beings who had mastered the ascension cycles of the entire universe came to join the Council of Christ Consciousness, which was mainly centered around Sirius B. And like EldoRa mentioned, from the Christ Consciousness Council governs all of humanity in this sector of the galaxy. So the Christ Consciousness is not just for Earth. There's Christ Consciousness schools of thought in Pleiades, in Sirius, in other places. So Christ Consciousness is a school of thought, or is a mystery school that teaches you the keys to go from human to superhuman, from your human to God self.
And they do this by teaching you how to go from ape consciousness to, and this is actually a very beautiful part of the download. They said you go from ape consciousness to God consciousness by doing what? You guys have any guesses? How do you go from ape consciousness to God consciousness? Take a second to think about it. By doing what? And you know what they showed us? You do it by learning how to create your heaven on earth. So as in wherever you are, in whatever time, space, reality you are, when you start to create your heaven on earth, even in these circumstances, you're now vibrating heaven on earth, heaven on earth, heaven on earth, because for God consciousness, there's only heaven on earth.
Exactly.
So this was the next part they showed us.
And then for our particular solar system, Saturn was the planet that represents the evolution of our solar system. So people think our solar system is just Earth has life and all the other planets are like gas or they're too hot for life. But Mercury has life forms because they're higher dimensional. Venus has life forms. The Hathors, the very ascended beings, are from Venus. Valiant Thor is from there. Jupiter has gaseous life forms, higher dimensional. Saturn was chosen as the planet to govern the spiritual evolution of all life forms in this solar system. So Saturn is like the central hub of Christ consciousness in our solar system.
Then tell them next about the unexpected turn. And then all of this was happening and there was an unexpected turn.
Yeah, so first we have to
Lemuria.
go to Lemuria.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, okay. So you want to start that?
Okay, so with Lemuria, what happened was, let me go back. Okay, so then, all right, let me focus back. So then what happened was all of this form was, so the first inhabitants started, creating Lemuria. They created this island. It was like an island life. The consciousness of Lemuria was the consciousness of a 14-year-old girl, which means pure at heart, love and light.
But no fuck you.
But no fuck you. Literally, guys, that's why we teach love, light, and fuck you too. We're not just kidding around here. This is the missing link, and Siman and I embody this link, and we're here to teach this link to help humanity ascend. So bear with us when we teach you some stuff that might rattle you, because we know what we're doing.
Yeah,
And we're not in our ego.
put the human aside for
Please
a few
put the
moments.
human aside. We love you unconditionally, and we're doing this together. We're doing this to serve humanity. We're not doing this for anything else. So then what happened was these Lemuria. So, when I was thinking about Lemuria, I thought of Tamarindo in Costa Rica. It's this hippie little island, no one's really, people live there, they live in hostels, and it's just a very small, the consciousness of Lemuria was like a 14-year-old girl.
So they were basically living an island life. There were no advanced
not
technologies.
ambitious. They were not super ambitious. So then the Saturn and they didn't have the fuck you, which means their curriculum was incomplete, right? Because you can't just be love and light. Most of the earth spiritual leaders today are love and light. Even the active spiritual leaders, they can get triggered by our FU because they don't have those keys, which is why what we're doing is very
important to the ascension.
It's very initial, like on earth.
Yeah.
Right? It's a very new way of teaching, I guess.
Yeah.
But anyway, so what happened was they needed, now in your earth school, in your earth curriculum, you cannot just have the consciousness of a 14-year-old girl, because life will trample you over.
Yeah.
So then what happened was they said, all right, the Saturn, the Christ Consciousness Council, the Council of Saturn, where I told you that these beings are now teaching humans how to ascend, they said, all right, let's call a board meeting. We now need to give Lemuria, this is crazy, a frequency match for them to learn the lessons of the dark. So then what they did was they paired them with negative reptilian beings from Mars, and said, perfect, there's this really evil race of reptilians on Mars. It's like literally in a zoo having a little lamb and then suddenly letting a tiger run out there. So imagine the shock that the Lemurians got when their sweet little consciousness island life was infiltrated by these beings, these crazy beings, negative reptilian beings who have evil, power-hungry control systems.
There were fourth dimensional beings who had only mastered service to self-polarity, and the way they reptilians came to Earth to join this experiment is because Lemuria became a vibrational match for the negativity because of the lessons humanity needed to learn. So for thousands and thousands of years, maybe for I don't know how many thousands of years, but Lemuria had its very, very glorious moments, but it was not all going all the way. It was becoming an ascended society, but it could only become this much. Like
it was missing keys.
Couldn't bridge all the gap, all the 12 keys that are needed, the 12 strands of DNA, because power is a big part of your ascension
it's
keys.
Love, power, wisdom.
Yeah,
that's
they had
key.
not mastered power. So think of the consciousness of a 14-year-old girl when you, like, if you want to bully a 14-year-old girl, not to make any stereotypes, but just as an example, the girl will not know how to defend herself, generally speaking, unless she knows karate. So basically, that was Lemuria. They needed that power template, so they became a vibrational match for the reptilians. But it's not like the reptilians just landed their spaceship on a beautiful island and started taking over. It happened more gradually, and the overseeing councils of light were aware of all of this. They were aware that there's a risk to humanity completely failing. Like the whole project could be wrapped up if this dark lesson was not mastered successfully. So they were all biting their nails. There's no surety in this universe.
Yes.
It's a free will universe. Like
yes.
You create an experiment in a petri dish, it can go south. Like that's what humanity really is. It's an experiment from their perspective in a little minuscule part of this universe. So
then you're going to tell them about Atlantis?
Yeah. So basically, they said we need a new way of living, a new society that combines the masculine with the feminine. So they wanted to bring in the masculine technologies, like the logic of higher technologies,
crystal technology,
and combine that with the feminine consciousness of humanity. So they started building the concept of Atlantis, and Atlantis had many epochs of time. There were like 5 grand cycles of Atlantis that have risen and fell. So Atlantis also has 5 cycles that have risen and fell, and we're in the 6th cycle. We're literally the 6th cycle of Atlantis. That's why we're known to be living in the time of the 6th sun. That's what it means. It's the 6th cycle of time that we're now entering into the golden age. So they started the concept of Atlantis like maybe 200,000 years ago, and then they created Human 2.0. That's when they took the basic Lemurian and they added advanced genetics to Human 2.0, and they gave them more knowledge from various species all around the galaxy, the Andromedan, the Pleiadian, the Sirians, Arcturians. So they added more DNA, and they also
to help humanity
made the concept of Atlantis. They divided Atlantis into 12 major
and they
cities.
made Atlantis in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, it was like a huge continent of its own in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and they divided it into 12 different cities. They had one segment open, which was the 13th city, but they didn't populate it because they didn't know what it was for. They were just being given the template of how to build their society from these higher dimensional beings.
From the Council of Saturn.
Yeah, so they were basically following the orders and saying, okay, we have to create 12 cities, we have to create, and each of the cities was head by the leader of a different tribe. So there were 12 bloodlines of original races, and these original races had the advanced genetics, like the leaders of these races had the advanced genetics of the perfected Adam Kadmon blueprint. So it's like they gave humanity a cheat sheet. They said, these are the ascended beings that are going to come to assist you when you're ready for your evolution. And they're going to hold this template for you to follow, and they're going to teach you everything, but you guys have to go through all the trials yourself. So each of these 12 cities was headed by 12 families, and these 12 families all had different function. And like we said, the 13th city was remaining vacant. They didn't know what it was for. So Atlantis was, this is a very high level bird's eye view. So we're glossing over many details, but the general gist of the theme is...
You're doing amazing.
Sorry, this is a very...
I'm shocked at how amazing we're doing, because it's a
very intricate topic, and each paragraph of this topic can be a book.
Yes.
Just saying. This is galactic history, right? So basically, now they have Atlantis. Atlantis was like a melting pot. So they have, think of Atlantis like where the party's at. So think of Atlantis where all the galactics want to come to party.
They showed us that it's like New York City.
Yeah, they literally showed us visions of Atlantis, how they were like crystal satellites literally hovering in the sky and powering up cities. They showed us advanced, they used to use pyramids in Atlantis for harnessing energy, but it's no longer needed now.
And how they created the rings. So Atlantis was built very intentionally because they realized that, hey, if we don't give the Lemurians, if we don't give humanity more information, more technology, they're going to just be loving like the Lemurians and just live a hippie life. They don't know anything about abundance. They don't have ambition. They don't keep growing. They just stagnate. So then what they did was they said,
Talk more about the rings of Atlantis.
Yeah, so then they started building. Everything in Atlantis was built.
It was built with intention.
Intention and higher technology. There were temples, and there were some of us that were the keepers of the temples, like me for my past life, and you can share yours as well. I was shown that I had, was it the Temple of Sound? Yeah, I believe so.
For me, I don't remember. I just remember being a temple keeper.
So for us, it was the Temple of Sound. That was our temple, if I remember right, but that's not important. So then each of, and these cities were built with very high technology. They knew how to take Earth, but use higher technology to access, to harness, to power up the grid. So they had rings of water and then rings of land, rings of water and then rings of land. So everything was built intentionally with galactic technology, with galactic insights to create Earth, to create heaven on Earth.
The cities were basically megalithic computers. Water is basically storing information. Water is like a crystal. So the whole city, when you look at the bird's eye view, it's like concentric circles of land filled with barges of water. So this was not for security purpose. This was to harness the energy from the great central sun and create pillars of light directly going into Earth.
Because water is a good conductor of electricity.
Yes.
So what would happen is all these higher dimensional technologies would be held by the whales and the dolphins and all of that. And water held the high consciousness, and it was constantly circulating in all beings on the planet.
Yeah.
So just to give you guys an idea, imagine right now how Earth, like the negative reptilians, have come in and they're doing the exact opposite. They have, over the last several years, taken away the self-sustaining system and created a matrix artificial control system to make us feel dependent on them. So this is kind of
that's
the
why they
history
want
of
to
it.
dominate water. That's why they want to sell you water in a plastic bottle to show that you have to pay for this gift of God. It's a free gift. So they want us to pollute our water. They want to disconnect us from water because water helps us connect with all the higher dimensions. And the way this society was structured is that the golden beings, these 12-foot tall golden beings from the higher councils of Christ consciousness, came down in Atlantis because they had created a society based on technology, based on think high fashion, think many civilizations hobnobbing with each other,
Think nightclubs,
think bars and
parties,
restaurants,
galactic
best
parties.
food you can imagine. Everyone's living like royalty. Think your home's like a palace.
And guys, it's important to know that when you think all this in Atlantis, really the easiest way to think of it is a more advanced New York City. So you know how New York is the melting pot? It's busy, it's commerce, it's a trade hub, it's lots of activity, it's a major international destination, any major international
Think Star
destination.
Wars.
And also how we were shown is Atlantis was not all light. There was light.
Negative polarities.
They went very high in their light quotient, and they also went very high in the dark quotient. Kind of like so it's both existed simultaneously.
So they were ascended masters walking the planet, and they were like reptilians walking the planet. These are all generalizations, but just to give you an idea. And what happened was that so Atlantis has all this thriving civilization, and Earth was like the galactic gateway. Earth is located on the fringes of this universe. So when other races from other galaxies want to come to our galaxy, Earth is like the water stop. It's like where they come and vacation for like 50 years before they move on to another planet.
Another way to say that is think of it as like in your cities. You know how you have the highways, you have the regular highway, and then you have the toll highway, and everybody wants to live by the toll highway because there's no traffic on that. So Earth is a major toll highway in the galaxy. So let's say someone in a spaceship wants to go from here to here, and Earth is a very easy, you just take a little detour and Earth is right there. It's a charging hub. People come there to, like he said, vacation, to charge up, to vacation, to rest.
In addition to that, Earth is also very significant because it contains many portals that connect us, this part of the galaxy,
to the other.
So we have wormholes that are very carefully guarded wormholes around planet Earth. And there's many portals on planet Earth that lead to other dimensions and other sectors of this galaxy. So these wormholes are very valuable in galactic civilizations because they allow you to jump travel. Like they allow you, once you enter the wormhole, and if the guardian knows that you're of the right vibration and of the right intention, you can't have evil intentions. These are carefully guarded portals. But if the guardian allows you in, you can literally jump hundreds of thousands of light years in the blink of an eye. So these are very valuable, and that's why Earth was like such a carefully guarded mission, because so many people wanted to control Earth and its resources and its portals. That's why many of these wars were being fought in recent times. The war for Iraq was to take over control of a multi-dimensional portal that exists in Iraq. They don't want you to know that. So basically what happened is Atlantis was at its peak of its glory, right? And then because we became a vibrational match for the reptilians, these reptilians from Mars that had destroyed their civilization on Mars, that's another story. But this reptilian consciousness from Mars had no home left because they had just destroyed Mars and they were living underground for thousands of years. And now they wanted to discover more planets to visit so they can proliferate. So they literally saw this opening in Atlantis, and they saw that there's a city that's vacant.
The 13th city,
the
remember?
13th city of Atlantis. They literally landed their spaceship and took over overnight with brute force.
Now, one thing it's important to note here, these are all very multidimensional transmissions. So it's important you soak this in and in a week rewatch this. Because it's going to alter and activate your DNA. Now imagine, this 13th city was built by the Saturn Council, right? The negative reptilians were allowed to land in the 13th city. they were allowed to interact with the island hippies to teach them some of the lessons around the dark. Who's allowing all this? Do you realize how everything that's happening is happening? It's being governed by higher councils in order to help humanity ascend.
Yeah.
That's
That's
breakthrough
very
in
important.
itself, because once you have that, you have your eyes on the prize. You know where you're going.
Yeah, so this is a game, but it's also not a game because pain is real, right? So basically, when these councils, when the Council of Christ Consciousness sees that there's a vacuum of lessons that need to be learned in humanity, they allow dark beings to come in. But dark beings in a physical form, it literally looks like they're taking over our planet without our permission. But in the spiritual realms, what happens is that humanity has to make a collective agreement on the higher planes to allow the reptilian consciousness to come in to teach us certain lessons. So all of these become soul contracts. So we have a soul contract to learn from the dark. It's not like we're perfectly fine and then suddenly they ruined our party. They were part of the whole plan from the beginning.
And many of you might have had very narcissistic relationships in your life. It could be with an employer, it could be with your spouse, with a boyfriend who had this very narcissistic energy. Why do you think you had that experience? Because you have a soul contract with this narcissistic person to abuse you, to belittle you, so that you can learn from it, learn how to isolate your energy, protect your energy, stand in your boundaries, use your power. These are all lessons that the dark is teaching us. Without the dark, we would not have all the keys.
That's why when sometimes people say, why do you give so much attention to negative comments, for example? We give
we don't give attention. That's a wrong.
No,
people
that's
think
what
we
they
do.
that's what they ask.
They
But I'm
project on us.
explaining. Why do we give attention to negative comments? Because this is the missing key to ascension. What happens when most light workers are faced with anger and negativity is they ignore it. They think, oh, I'm going to go meditate. I'm going to be in my bubble, and this doesn't trigger me. I'm beyond that. But the thing is, you have to learn how to deal with it. When you turn your face away, you're not dealing with it. So this is the lesson in 2022 that all these beings, the lion beings, the Christ consciousness beings, all the ascended masters, they're making humanity, they're literally taking your head, they're opening your eyelids, and they're saying, here, look at the dark. This is what you've been avoiding. That's why we're going through the dark night of the soul now.
Yes, and I want to re-clarify a little bit. This is very multidimensional, so it's important that you understand all aspects of the teaching. We've been teaching for 2 years that when people, so this is our policy, how we do our social media, and many of you are Instagrammers, many of you are healers. So I'm giving you this as a download, as a template that we use. And we were guided to do this 2 years ago. Our guide said there's always going to be trolls. There's always going to be people trying to pull you down, especially in the first year. Ignore them, ban them, delete them, don't even put your attention on them. But see, there's a lot of new people on our channel right now. So recently, what we've been guided to do recently, because now this year, the curriculum is to teach you guys how to handle the dark. So what we do is we take some examples of people being rude to us, instead of just banning them or flicking them off, because they're not important right now in our mission. Our mission is not to work with them. Our mission is to work with people who are ready. And so is your mission. Your mission is to work with those who are ready. So what now the guides are saying is, once in a while, when you see a really good projection made at you or a comment that is negative, make it a teaching. That's what leaders do. So because right now we're untouchable. We don't sit and sulk about that comment, because if somebody makes a negative comment, we know it's more about them and has nothing to do with us. It's a standard in our life. That's so because we're embodied in it. So now we take some of those lessons to teach you guys how to stand up in your power. Like recently, somebody said something about my body, and someone said, why are you putting this picture in a bathing suit or whatever? You don't even have a good body. It didn't touch me, it didn't touch Siman, because we see where this guy's coming from. And so when I put it up, it's very interesting. I put it up as a teaching, and what I love is that many people from our soul community started coaching the guy and saying, are you for real?
They started voicing themselves, and that's what we want to see. We're here to teach humanity how to grow up from being the consciousness of a 14-year-old girl to like the balanced masculine, feminine Adam Kadmon being. And standing in your power is the key.
And ever since we did that, so many people are starting to stand up.
Yes.
Because we're teaching you guys at our expense by putting up someone insulting us and saying, hey, we don't care. But it's very interesting. This is a slight quick digress, so I don't have to come back to it. But it's very interesting that even people in my inner circle, how they reacted to it. So yesterday I was with someone in Florida, and I was showing her something that somebody had sent me, and she's on my channel, and she looked at me and she's like, don't even feel bad. Like, don't even think that and I'm like, they're consoling me as if I need consoling, because what's happening is women are they would be broken if someone said that about their body. Like, oh, you don't even look good. But I'm not broken because I've healed. I love my body. I don't want anybody else's body. I actually have I love my body. I consider myself a very sexy, sensual being. So when I had friends leave me voice messages saying, I'm so sorry, EldoRa, I'm so sorry, you're beautiful just as you are, I find that very sweet. But I also kind of find it like, honey, you need to be looking at yourself, because if you're wanting to console me, I love you. I love these people who did this for me. But the teaching, I'm also a teacher. The teacher is, you're reacting towards me as if this happened to you. That if someone said to you that your body is not good, you'd cry and you'd be devastated. So you're now projecting that on me in a loving way, saying, EldoRa, I want to hold you. This person said that. But what we want you to do instead is love your own body. And then if someone said something to me or to someone else, you stand up from mastery and say, honey, you don't need to talk about EldoRa's body. Just because you don't love your own body, you're talking about her or Siman, or you're projecting on them. That is the warrior energy that needs to come out.
So the gist of the message we're trying to convey right now is that every single thing we do is a teaching, and we're not doing it because we're playing some ego.
We're never triggered.
We're not triggered.
We've passed our triggers. We've passed our ego lessons. We're not triggered.
And we're very confident in who we are. We know exactly who we are. And we wish for to remind everyone who they are. So
there's a lot of teachings here, and the reason this is coming up in this video, because everything is like literally
it's all
flowing,
connected.
It's to show you guys how important the dark is now.
Yeah, that's why we constantly say love, light, and fuck you. We are here to master the light and the dark, because in previous epochs of time, the Pleiadians actually have to stop their ascension. They came to a ceiling in their ascension because they didn't master the lessons of the dark. That's one of the reasons the Pleiadians are actually helping humanity right now, because humanity is the descendants of the Pleiadians, and we are the first species in this sector of the universe, in this galaxy. We're the first species who has mastered the light and the dark through centuries of the wars and the torture and the abuse that we've gone through. So when we become ascended masters in this golden age, we're going to be human 7.0. We're going to be the most shiny thing this universe has ever seen.
And I want to say something here to give you guys a template. Many of you are newly awakening, and you see a lot of these spiritual teachers, not teachers, but you see these beautiful beings, angelic looking beings doing light language and all of that. My request to you guys is to not be mesmerized by this. Many of you have a way higher consciousness than these innocent, pure, angelic looking beings with blue eyes channeling light language. Because these people have the consciousness of a 14-year-old girl in Lemuria. They have no idea how to stand up for themselves. So don't fall for the image of spirituality. This is coming through as guidance.
Breaking the paradigms of New Age spirituality, where people are just leading based on I am so love and light,
and I look so angelic,
that I got it all, but they don't got it all. So use your discernment. You have to see the balance in the teacher. You have to see they're able to teach the dark and the light, not just the light. That's very important.
It's important not to get
basically, coming back to Atlantis, when these reptilian beings came and populated the 13th city, they created a lot of ruckus. They infiltrated our society over hundreds and thousands of years, not hundreds of thousands, but over a long period of time. And they joined the ranks of our governments as what do reptiles do? These are all
slithering reptiles.
Yeah, these are all templates that are shown to us through snakes. So a snake, what is the this was a download that was given to me this morning. When you look at a king
you didn't
cobra,
tell me this.
Yeah, I didn't even get a chance to share this. When you look at a king cobra standing in front of you, he's saying to you, don't come near me or I'll bite you. That's the reptilian consciousness, right? So the reptilian consciousness is, don't come near me or I'll bite you. So many humans actually do this in our daily lives. When somebody hurts us, we have reptilian DNA in ourselves. Our vertebrae is reptilian. So when somebody hurts us, instead of
when he says we, it's we.
Yeah, when somebody hurts humanity,
all of us.
What we do is we attack them. We automatically jump to revenge. We say, you hurt me, now I have to hurt you. And the cycle propagates. But what our guides, what our angels are telling us is that the normal response when somebody hurts you is to allow that hurt to be felt. Because that hurt is triggering something deep within you that you've never allowed yourself to see. That there's deep wisdom in that. If you start allowing yourself to feel all the negative emotions. Many of you are going through the dark night of the soul because you're being taught to spend time with your inner child and to feel all your negative emotions, because that's the key to ascension. Many of us just bypass all these negative emotions, put on a happy smile and say, oh, I was depressed last month, but I'm doing well. I took a couple of pills and we're all set.
And
right?
I just went to get my manicure, pedicure, and I feel good now.
Yeah,
They
miss the whole steps, and that's why you keep attracting the same negative relationships. You keep attracting the same guy who takes advantage of you and abuses you. You keep attracting families that belittle you. You keep attracting people that put you down constantly. So all this happens because you have not yet mastered the lessons of darkness that the universe is trying to show you. So in Atlantis, coming back to the project, the reptilians basically drove the society down to the ashes. They misuse technologies. They misuse many of the crystal satellites that were used. Atlantis had 9D crystal satellites. There were Arcturian technologies used that were hovering above the atmosphere constantly, and they were powering up agriculture, society, governments, buildings. They were powering up everything through grids and satellites. So crystals were highly used in Atlantis. And the Arcturians actually had technologies that they could build crystals the size of skyscrapers within minutes, within hours. They had that kind of technology. So they were advanced technicians, but these reptilians, they thought they could misuse this technology to make the power satellite into a weapon of war. So they did not know that there was, because
so just to slow down, because this is an important piece.
Yeah.
So basically Atlantis, the 12 families were using all these high frequency power grids, crystal power grids that they had built, they had received from the galactics. This 13th island, the reptilians that populated the 13th island, took that same technology and tried to use it because they were very powerful, like crystal satellites that could, they
could be used for destruction.
Yeah.
If altered.
So they used it for the wrong purposes.
But they didn't realize that the Arcturians, being benevolent beings, had fail-safe systems in these crystals. Even this Vogel crystal is based on Arcturian technology, and it has fail-safe systems. If I start using it for any negative intent, the crystal will actually crack because it has its own consciousness. It's not allowed to be used for anything other than the purposes of healing and love, spreading love. So when the reptilians tried to misuse the reptilian satellites to create weapons of mass destruction, those satellites overloaded, and it caused a chain reaction that caused the overload of all the power grids of Atlantis. And there are many versions of how Atlantis fell. This is the version we've been shown. And the whole continent sank. Before the continent sank, the Arcturians were like the seers, right? There were many people from the golden races from higher dimensions that knew that within 100 years, based on the trajectory we're going at, Atlantis will fall and there will be no chance to save humanity. Many people escaped from Atlantis. Like, there were many advanced races that just left. There were many humanoid races that just left, but there were also many humanoids that were so embedded in the 4D drama, in the war drama of power and control, that they were not allowed to see the destruction of Atlantis. So they were caught in the incarnation cycles of the earth, and they were so embedded in the story that they were not allowed to see the destruction of their own planet that they were creating.
And guys, this is again brings us to current times. You see how similar everything is. This is what's
Yeah.
going on right now. Most people are so caught in the drama saying my spouse hasn't got the jab, and I'm in so much fear, and I'm in so much guilt, and I did this, and I blame her, and we're all in this. So 4D is all about this duality. It keeps us so locked into duality that you can't really. So duality vibrates here, 3D vibrates here. You guys are now in lower 4D, many of you. You're vibrating here, but to get out, the matrix is still, you're still in the box, you're still in the ball of the matrix.
Yeah.
To crack through this, you need to get this lid off so you can go here. How do you do that? That is why we teach you everything that we teach you, because we're giving you our simple intention is we got out from here. So we got out from inside the ball to outside the ball. We've gotten out energetically, and that's what the ball is still the same.
Yeah.
You're just operating from within it, or you're operating from outside of it. And we are operating from outside of it right now based on our frequency. So that's another way to say that Earth houses all frequency beings.
Exactly.
It houses the 3D beings, like the people, who are working in restaurants, wearing masks, like working in malls. They're not going to ask questions. They're just going to do as they're told. But it also houses the beings like us who are now Christ consciousness and who are ready to be the ascended masters, and who our gifts are activating, our powers are activating. We're not in this, we're here. Yeah. You guys are now being trained to get out of being inside, to get up to vibrate higher. It's all about vibration.
Yeah, so to do that, we basically have to let go of the story. When we stop getting our
1:33:33.
Oh,
1
nice.
hour, 33 minutes,
Beautiful.
33 seconds.
Time flies when you're having fun.
No, but it's Christ consciousness numbers.
Yeah, I know.
So go ahead, you can complete the story.
Yeah, so basically Atlantis fell. That was because they misused the technology. That was approximately 15,000 years ago. There was 2,000 years of nuclear winter. And then Noah's Ark. So basically, before Atlantis fell, some of the benevolent beings that were here, they chose a spokesperson for humanity, which was the prophet Zarathustra. Zoroastrianism comes from Zarathustra. So Zarathustra was actually Noah in the Bible. So they chose the prophet Zarathustra to collect the genetic samples of all the species on the planet and create a spaceship kind of submarine. Not a spaceship that flies out of the planet, but can survive for hundreds of years underneath the surface of the water. So Zarathustra and his friends were the only ones who survived. There were different pockets of humanity that survived Atlantis, but Zarathustra was given the heads up, and he was given all of the DNA samples with which to repopulate Earth. So after this nuclear winter, we literally had to start from cave-dwelling species. They were literally like, we had to fend ourselves away from animals and start from scratch, like fire and the wheel, basically.
So after Atlantis sank, there was the crystal explosion. The explosion caused the whole Atlantis to sink, and there was 2,000 years of nuclear darkness.
Yeah.
There was nothing after that. There was no life except this submarine with...
and very few pockets of humanity survived.
Very few pockets, and the submarine luckily collected from what we've been shown, and we're still dissecting all of this. They took all the samples that were needed to rebuild civilization, and they escaped.
Submarine is Noah's Ark, basically. Then what happened is, now we're in the time of the sixth sun. So now we're in the grand cycle. God had decreed that planet Earth is going to be destroyed and wrapped up. But all the ascended masters, they intervened on our behalf. Sanat Kumara came before the throne of God. And
tell them the story, it's so beautiful.
So basically, God had decreed to fold up the Earth experiment after the fall of Atlantis, because we had fallen too much into evil and duality, and we had become, we had gained arrogance and pride, and we wanted to be gods ourselves, and we wanted to prove to God that we don't need all this wisdom, that we can do it ourselves. That's what caused our downfall. So when God decreed that Earth experiment is to be folded up and we're supposed to be destroyed, we were supposed to, in the current timeline, just live our days and then have a great war and wrap up Earth. And that was the plan. But Sanat Kumara, who was the ascended master from Venus, but he originally came from a different universe. He's known as the Ancient of Days. He came before the... Okay, this is going to make me cry. So he did the most sweetest thing I've ever heard anyone do. He came before the throne of God and he said, I will hold the torch for humanity and I will incarnate that there at my own expense, and I will hold the light in all the darkness. And this is after the last fall of Atlantis. And he said, I will hold the light for humanity because one person is needed, at least one person is needed to hold the light of pure source consciousness for all of humanity to be able to live on this planet. And when his disciples heard that he was going to sacrifice himself, Master Buddha came. And Master Buddha came marching with an army of 144,000. And they were all disciples of Sanat Kumara. And Sanat Kumara, think of the throne of God and Sanat Kumara standing before the throne of God, offering himself as the sacrificial lamb for humanity. And then Master Buddha said, we will not let you suffer in pain and misery, my master. We will, my teacher. He said, we will incarnate before you so that we pave the way for humanity. We will hold the light until you come. So all the masters, they started creating their city of Shambhala in the Gobi Desert in Africa, and they took many hundreds of years to create that city because they needed a central hub where Sanat Kumara could incarnate. And for 1,000 years, they prepared that city to hold the light for these Sanat Kumara and the Ascended Masters to come. So Master Buddha came 5,000 years ago, and then Lord Sananda came 2,000 years ago. Jesus in the form of Jesus. Mary Magdalene. Isis came. She was like a goddess priestess 7,000 years ago in Egypt. All these beings of light, they were all known in Greek mythology. All these beings like Zeus, Athena, all these mythical characters are actually real. So these are all masters who came to incarnate on the planet to hold the light for humanity so that we have a fighting chance. And because of that sacrifice of the Ascended Masters, we were allowed to ascend, and they kept the lineages and they kept the oral traditions and they kept passing down the knowledge from generation to generation until today, until 1989, when we passed the harmonic convergence. And not only did humanity make it to the ascension, we made it to the ascension with flying colors.
With bells and whistles
exceeded the expectations of the higher realms. And
if not for Sanat Kumara, Earth would have been wrapped up and destroyed. That is what our angels do for us.
We made it because of all these powerful beings who never gave up on us. And it's not like they could just sit in their control room and push buttons. They actually had to sacrifice themselves and go through great pain and misery. We all know the sacrifice of the masters, how difficult their lives were, how much hardship they endured for us. And now we're going to be the new kids on the block. We're going to be the Ascended Masters who rise out of this grand experiment. So this is the final stage that we're in. We're in the final stage of the ascension. We're in the time of the sixth sun, and we're literally nearing the finish line now. After all these years, after thousands and millions of years of evolution, we are the ones. We're all the ones. We don't even know how important we are. We're like being cheered on by the whole galaxy right now because we are the ones that balanced all of the dark and the light, and we made it. So this was the origin of Christ consciousness and how we came into present day. And this is just to remind us how important your lives are. Don't waste your life thinking I'm small. Don't waste your life thinking I'm not good enough. Don't waste your life thinking I will do as I'm told. You are more powerful than you can ever imagine. You are sovereign beings. You have powers beyond your imagination that if you put your mind to it, you can start creating things out of thin air. So the template of the Adam Kadmon being and the template of the future that we're ascending to is a state where we're literally fifth dimensional beings, and we can think things into fruition. We can create food if we desire. Our angels are telling us that in New Earth, there's not going to be need for any technology like Atlantis. We're not going to need pyramids and all these large monolithic buildings, because we're the most powerful crystals the universe has ever seen.
Just soak that up. We're more powerful than crystals.
We're going to be equipped with all the technology within us,
in our consciousness, in our light bodies.
That we need to create anything. So if you want to visualize your house, that you visualize the blueprints of a house, and you apply focus and thought, and you create the house with your thoughts.
And we're being trained on this now, guys. So the way we're being trained on it is that Siman and I have specific roles, which is why we're brought together. We're being shown that he has more, that's the twin flame. We don't call ourselves twin flame because we're more than that. We feel like twin flame is again a small box, and the way we're being shown is that Siman he has access to the stars. So he's the star guy and I'm the earth girl. So and both are
Father
needed.
Sky and Mother Earth.
Father Sky and Mother Earth. And so what they do is they're training us, saying Siman can reach up to the stars, send the command, and Jesus used to do this, by the way, send the commands of whatever is needed by using his own Kundalini energy to project it up, which is why we do so much Tantra and we teach Tantra, because Tantra, that force that's rising.
And it also, Tantra helps us activate our light body and our dormant gifts.
So what happens is all this energy that we build up in our Kundalini, so Siman shoots it up, says the command of what we need. That command is sent down, and then once it comes down, I get the codes. And the way I get the codes is through sperm. So this is, again, it's like all these tantric teachings. So when we make love, when we're intimate, when we, it's that making love process that activates all these codes. So then I get the codes, and then I take those instructions from the stars and I embed them in earth. So I'm in charge of the projects. Like, all right, so now this is the information coming in. Fine, we need to do a solstice event. All right, this is what I need to. So I'm the project manager on earth, and he's the project manager in the sky, and we bring these two projects to fruition on earth.
And every single person is capable of doing what we're doing. We're just here to herald the way and teach the blueprints of how this is done. But you have to be of a very pure consciousness. You have to have mastered all your chakras. You have to have activated your galactic chakras. You have to have removed your seals, implants. You have to be able to hold a very high consciousness and human form to be able to do the things that we're doing. And that's our soul's mission. Our soul's mission is to ascend rapidly and to give humanity the blueprints of what we experience.
We're ascending very rapidly. We literally feel like right now we're ascending.
And everything that we teach, we embody. So we don't teach from books. Like it's not like I read a book and say, hey, this is what happened in Atlantis. It's actually shown to us in visions, but it's also corroborated in other sources. And also, whatever we teach, we embody, which means I'm not going to tell you to go on a diet and unless I'm in shape, right?
It's in divine alignment.
Like whatever we do, we embody. Like we balanced our emotions, we've let go of our tethers. So we're not giving any advice that we have not experienced firsthand. We all need to become embodied beings. That's the difference between theory and practice. Spirituality is not about reading books. It's about being the living keys to the library of Earth. And you become the living keys of the library to Earth by activating your DNA. And by being living examples, practice what you preach.
That was beautiful.